Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipson. Welcome to episode 94 of Sports Management Podcast. Before we start, I just want to ask you all for a very small favor. If you like this podcast, please subscribe to it on Spotify and Apple and give it a 5-star rating. It would help me very much in getting it visible to more people out there. Thank you. Moreover, this episode is sponsored by Insport Education, the online business school for sport. The best way to elevate your sports career, except for listening to this podcast, is to take part in Insport Education's courses and programs. Insport Education is offering sports management podcast listeners 10% off all of their courses with the code SportsManagementPodcast10. Click the link in the description below and elevate your sports business career today. Now, today's guest is Christos Sfantos, the co-founder, president, and co-CEO of Athens Women's Football Summit, founded in 2018. Marios is also the president of Valencia CF Academy in New York, a community owner of Lewes FC, a sports law professor, and is admitted to practice law in the state of New York, New Jersey, Southern District of New York, Eastern District of New York, District of New Jersey, and the United States Supreme Court. Get ready to learn why he started Athens WFS, about his passion for soccer, about Lewes FC and how they are the first club in the world to treat its women footballers the same as its men, the upcoming summit, and much more. Marios Sfantos, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am so happy that you're here, taking time out of your very busy schedule. You have a lot on your plate, but one of them is that you are the co-founder, president, and CEO of Athens Women's Football Summit. So can you tell us first a little bit about what you do with them?
Thank you very much. It is really an incredibly exciting organization that we really came about back in 2018. It was a time when there was incredible interest in women's football. However, there was no one place where the industry could gather year after year and year round in order for people who are stakeholders within the game, whether it's on the sporting side, the business side, investment, broadcasting, NGOs, government, it doesn't matter. There was no one place for everyone to gather. And of course, it was a time when women's soccer was certainly very under-resourced. We can talk about where things are now, but certainly back then, you would see great interest around a World Cup or a Euro or the Olympics, and then you would have fans rushing to the stadium, and then we'd have a quiet period. And we thought that it would be very important to have a global home for the women's game. And so in Athens, we founded the Athens Women's Football Summit as a year-round global gathering place, a global home for the women's football industry, meant to help drive the healthy long-term growth of women's football at all levels. And it was founded together with my wonderful friend and colleague, Gisela Ostomazatos, who is the formerly of Deloitte, former general manager of Panathinaikos Football Club of Athens, currently the GM of Aris Football Club in Thessaloniki. These are on the men's side. And so we founded this organization, and it's really been an incredible experience as year-round we bring together top stakeholders to create new and exciting collaborations for the good of the game.
That's fantastic and a great initiative. It's a sport on the rise. I know you are based in New York, so soccer in general in US is on the rise now, and especially the women's game, I would say, with the NWSL and so on. But also in Europe, obviously, soccer much bigger in Europe. So how can some of these summits look like, and how do you work to grow the interest and get more people involved?
It's incredible what's going on right now. You see the attendance records being broken week after week. Last year at Barcelona versus Wolfsburg, we had over 91,000 fans attending that women's Champions League match. And just a couple of days ago, we had over 32,000 fans in the opening game of the San Diego Wave. It just is, and no matter where you look, in Rome a couple of weeks ago, over almost 40,000 fans week after week. You're seeing new records being broken as there is unprecedented interest in the women's game. And that's something that is totally predictable and foreseeable, considering that, for over 100 years, the men's game has had so much investment put into it, the year after year, and most of the time without anyone expecting to make any money out of it. And yet women's soccer, women's football, not only was it banned for decades in countries like England, Germany, Brazil, and other countries, but it has been incredibly under-resourced, under-marketed, under-supported in every way, whether you're talking about infrastructure or pay or marketing, you just can go down the list. And now that we finally see that people are getting what we've been talking about for years and years and years, that if you invest in the game, if you show it the respect it deserves, if you treat its players, its coaches, its other stakeholders with the respect and give them the resources that they need, equitable pay, etc., that the game is just exploding and no matter what metric you're looking at. So this is really an amazing time. We could talk more about that during this conversation, but getting back to the summit, the Athens Women's Football Summit has just been an amazing experience. Every year it's held on the beautiful Athens Riviera in Voula, just a southern neighborhood of Athens, Greece. We're incorporated in New York, a for-profit corporation that works globally. However, we bring everyone together every year in Athens. And the first such summit was in 2019, where we had incredible people such as Tatiana Henai, who was running competitions for FIFA on the women's side for over 10 years and involved in the game in many different levels. Now she's currently the chief sporting director of the NWSL here in the United States. We had Brigitte Henrique, who was the vice president of the French Federation, who had just put on that amazing 2019 World Cup. We had friends of the game, supporters of women's football, such as Gilberto Silva was there, the great World Cup winner with Brazil and Arsenal Invincible. We had great female players and coaches like Carolina Morace, the Italian legend, the first human being and only human being to ever score 4 goals at Wembley. She was honored with our first ever Athens Women's Football Summit Award, the most prestigious private award given in women's soccer. It's a work of art, which you really should go on the website and take a look. It's a depiction of 11 Nikes, the goddess of victory. So the Nike, it's a wonderful piece of art, critically acclaimed, that was created by the internationally respected artist Nikos Karotis, who's in Athens. And we had just phenomenal people there, all the Greek First Division teams from Cyprus, teams from around the world present. And it really was something that was trailblazing. It had never been done before. Then COVID came, of course, and we couldn't get together in person, but in 2020, we hosted the world's largest digital summit, women's football, where we had, player of the century, Michelle Akers, and so many other great players, Shannon McMillan, the U.S. national team. And I can go down the list of just the movers and shakers of the women's game in what was another groundbreaking summit seen around the world. And then, of course, last year we had the summit in September in Athens, where Tatiana Henai received the Athens Women's Football Summit Award, and we had Wolfsburg there, Valencia, Lewes FC, all different kinds of clubs and incredible stakeholders. The English FA was there, Rupinder Baines from the board of directors of the FA. We had the CONCACAF there with Heidi Pellerano, who's their chief commercial officer. And really, I would be doing quite an injustice if I would leave out so many incredible people who were with us also in September, including JP Renal of the Women's Cup, which is the most exciting private women's cup competition tournament that goes on yearly, bringing teams from all the continents to North America. We had just Victoire Reynal was there also. Kogiavina Reynal is just one of the most exciting people in women's soccer. Currently the VP of VP of women's football, just this spectacular leader of the game. And again, I would leave so many spectacular people out. The whole point is bringing together the top stakeholders from in and around the women's game to one place for 2 days, and most people stay longer, allowing everyone to not only experience very powerful panel discussions, keynotes, other one-on-one discussions, workshops, but really bringing people together to allow them to get to know each other, truly get to know each other, build new relationships, new friendships, and importantly, new collaborations that help drive the game at every level, right? So that's why, bringing together these different organizations, clubs, federations, confederations, brands, investors, sponsors, broadcasters, NGOs, for example, the Sports Girl Project was there, Girl Power was there, SDFC was there. And again, I'll leave others out, and I don't want to do that. That would be unfair. It's really a unique opportunity that you don't find at any other gathering in the world. Again, we're not FIFA, we're not UEFA, we're not these federations, confederations, or governmental organizations. We are clubs, we are all these different stakeholders working together to grow women's soccer and to finally push it to the levels it deserves.
Wow, first of all, what a lineup there from the events. That's amazing, and great to get so much, knowledge and talent in one room and share.
Truly, we're honored and blessed to have such incredible friends and colleagues and allies of the women's game gathering together every year. And we work throughout the year also, but it's always important to bring people together into one place, and so much good comes out of it every time.
I'm sure. So if we look at women's football as a business and as an investment, why is it such a good investment?
First of all, it's completely untapped, right? It's completely untapped. I mean, as I said before, when it comes to the men's game, and I'm very involved in the men's game. I love it at every level. There, we've been throwing money into it for over 100 years. And no one really complained that so much money was being thrown into it and lost in men's soccer all this time. But the women's game has gotten practically zero investment if we look at the big picture over these years. Yes, the U.S. Soccer Federation has done some great work, and you've seen it, right? You've seen the results. You've seen investors putting their money into teams in NWSL. You've seen it in Europe and other places around the world. Look at the success of Wolfsburg. Look at the success of Lyon. Now we're seeing great investment by clubs around the world, by investors, by ownership groups, and just looking at what we have in terms of teams nowadays, like Angel City. We can talk more about that, where you have all these incredible owners involved. But the point is that now we're seeing that as more investment is going into these teams, into these leagues, into the infrastructure, you're starting to see record numbers of viewership, record numbers of attendance. The last World Cup in 2019, you had over 1.12 billion people watching. Last year in NWSL, you had over 1 million people going to the stadiums, and a number that's going to be broken easily this year. You're seeing record crowds every time that you give the women's game an opportunity, right? So for example, you look at the last Euro, I was blessed to be at Wembley Stadium to see the Lionesses defeat Germany 2-1 at that amazing final last year. That Euro had, I think it was over 570,000 fans attended those games. That's almost 2.5 times what you had just a few years earlier in the Netherlands in the previous Euro. And what we're finding again and again and again is if you give people what they want, and people want women's soccer, right? They want to watch women's football. They want to see it on TV. They want to see it live. They want to play the game. If you give them the facilities, if you give them the broadcasting, the coverage, you give them the stadiums, you give them the teams, then they fill those stadiums, and to the point that there's no room in the stadiums for more people to fit in. I think we just saw that right now in Australia, where they had originally, ahead of the exciting World Cup that's coming up this summer. It starts July 20th, New Zealand and Australia. They had done what we see sometimes again and again. They had booked stadiums that were too small, but the demand far exceeded the size of these stadiums. I have no doubt that if you have a stadium of 100,000 for an important game, you're going to fill that stadium. And you saw that again and again. Wembley was sold out. You see stadiums being sold out left and right. So that's a long-winded answer that partially answers your question as to why invest in women's football. The point is that we are just scratching the surface right now in terms of the popularity of the sport.
Yeah.
If you show it on TV, if you give the opportunity to people to play it and consume the game, the potential is unlimited.
For sure. And when people demand equal pay for women football player versus men football player, there always someone will say, when they generate the same amount of money as the men, then they will get paid the same. But obviously the interest is there. So, I mean, so many people are watching, you are giving all of these great examples. So of course there is an interest. So now I feel like it's changing and more companies are investing and they see it as a good business opportunity. So hopefully we have reached now a changing point.
Absolutely. We talk to a lot of corporations, and even during COVID, the interest in sponsoring women's soccer and investing in women's soccer, instead of going down, it continued to rise rapidly. And you see, look, for example, at what are the companies that are sponsoring the NWSL, for example, which for most people is the best women's football league in the world. I mean, they have at least, I think the number's around 14 corporate sponsors right now. Nike and Budweiser and Verizon and MasterCard I'm missing quite a few, Procter and Gamble, and I'm missing quite a few there from that list. But it just shows you, you see Barclays. I mean, I'm the Ally here in the U.S. The bank they're doing amazing work, and Barclays in England and what have you. There isn't a moment that you don't hear of a new investment group or a new group wanting to sponsor the game, inquiring as to how they can get involved. I mean, just here in the United States, you have 12 NWSL teams now, and there are dozens more investment groups that are interested in getting a team in markets around the country, right? And you're seeing the incredible growth of the game in Mexico. We were just in Mexico last year for the CONCACAF W Championship. And you can go to any restaurant or bar at night and you turn on the television and they're showing women's soccer primetime, right? In front of crowds that are amazing, that men's teams would be jealous of, right? And they're doing great work down in Mexico. And I should mention that whenever we do a webinar or we live stream any of our programs or our summits, our viewership in Mexico is through the roof. It's actually our number one viewership in the world for when we do things online is Mexico. Just to show you, Brazil's up there, Spain's up there, obviously the US, Greece, Cyprus. The interest is enormous. And it's the only industry in the world where no matter what metric you look at, you see growth year after year after year in triple digits, right? So our position is that, not only is women's soccer, women's football not a secondary priority or a charity or something like that, the way some people in the past used to look at it, it is serious business. And it is an incredible investment and economic opportunity. And now companies get it. When we started our work some years ago, not everyone got it. Not everyone got it. We would talk to a lot of companies and unfortunately would be incredibly disappointed at the attitudes that would come across, which quite frankly showed that they really hadn't looked at the situation. And I'll put aside any kind of bias or misogyny that you, unfortunately, we do find in all kinds of organizations and levels. But those companies, though, that did get it, that did understand it, they were incredibly excited, incredibly interested in investing in the game. Now, that interest is everywhere, right? And that's why the game is growing rapidly. With the more resources you put into it, with the right people, the right partners, done in the right way of thinking, looking at things long term, the more you will see positive results.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking about the equality and equity between the men and women's football, you are also involved with the Lewes FC, which is a very interesting club where you were a community owner.
That's right.
They are doing great things. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Listen, everyone has favorite clubs, right? I think depending on which country you're in and what's your background, and maybe you have a different team in every country, right? I mean, a lot of people do that. Like in Spain, I love Valencia. In Greece, I may love Ajax. You could just go down the list. In the U.S., it could be a local team. But the thing is that Lewes FC is that second favorite that people around the world have. It's that team that is so highly respected and so highly admired, because back in 2017, they decided to do what no other club in the world is doing. They decided to equally resource their men's and women's teams, right? So that means their teams' marketing, pay, facilities, just go down the list of different qualities that resources that any club needs. And they're the only club in the world that equally resources its men's and women's teams. And immediately you saw not only the eyes of the world coming to that club, right? But it elevated the whole organization. It elevated the men's team and the women's team and brought in great resources. If you go there right now at a wonderful stadium that's actually in what is a kind of a national park in a great town called Lewes there, you'll find that it's a stadium where it gets great acclaim, right? It was even voted by one publisher as the best stadium in Great Britain. And the reason is the atmosphere that's there is amazing. The other day they played Manchester United in the FA Cup. I think it was the quarterfinals. It was an incredible game. Over 2,500 fans were there. And, Man U won 3-1, but what a game. And they're playing on $1 million grass field, right? A grass field that their men's team would never have had if the women's team was not in the championship. And if you did not have this Equality FC strategy that they put in 2017, that is taking the team from strength to strength, taking the club from strength to strength. A club that is community owned, anyone can go on their website and buy a bit of the ownership of that team. So it's an incredibly democratic and forward-thinking club that is really driving change, not only in English women's football, but in football globally.
That's a great example to show that it's not charity women's football, that the men finances the women's sport. Here it was actually reversed, that this all investment in the equity, and the women were performing so well that they actually invested those money into also the men's football.
No, and you bring a good point there, because around the world we do, and I've been involved in these situations where you have a women's team that is attached to a big traditional men's team, and yet they're not giving the resources to that women's team that they need, whether it's in training facilities or transportation or what have you. And remember, women are not asking for equal pay always, right? I mean, yes, the U.S. national team has achieved equal pay, equal bonuses, equal everything, and they deserve that, right? But that's different. That's national team level, where you have the U.S. women's national team having won 4 gold medals at the Olympics and 4 World Cups, and having won so many other tournaments and really being at the top of the world, and they deserve to get paid equally. And that's why, after years and years of fighting, they finally achieved the most incredible agreement with U.S. Soccer. And the men's team of U.S. Soccer, the men's national team, is also part of this agreement, where all the money that comes in from the men's and the women's teams are equally distributed. And that is absolutely fair, and absolutely an arrangement there through their collective bargaining agreement, et cetera, that is really setting a precedent, right? So that's on the national team level.
Yeah.
And that is something we've been fighting for years. When you're talking about on the club level, now, obviously the economics are still different. What women are asking for is equitable pay, right? Fair pay, right? They don't, at this point, they don't need to make the money that a Messi or Ronaldo is making. Okay. But what they do deserve to make is money that corresponds to not only their incredible skill and hard work and talent and everything else that goes to being a top world athlete, which is top world entertainment, but also respecting the fact that they are top level professionals, right? So they should not have to work 2 or 3 jobs outside of the game and worry about how they're going to pay their bills and what are they going to do with their child care and what happens when they get pregnant and, what happens if they get an ACL injury and all these things. Women are asking for equitable pay, equitable treatment, and they deserve that. And those clubs that give them that, the results that they get on and off the field, right? And that includes all the merchandising and the coverage and the interest and the attendance and the corporate sponsorship and the new partnerships that come in is phenomenal. When clubs show true respect to their female footballers, their coaches and everyone else involved, then immediately the money comes in.
And that's even more impressive that women are performing so well on the pitch while, working part-time jobs, and they don't have the same time to train and the same facilities and everything as the men.
Yeah, and you see that once you give them what they deserve, then the level of the game rises rapidly. Even you're seeing year after year because of better training, better facilities, you name it, over the years, right? That even the game is getting faster, right? The players are getting stronger. The game is getting faster. The game itself is evolving, and that makes sense, right? We see with the men's game, with the unprecedented levels of money and technology and know-how and everything that goes into the men's game. I mean, what we're seeing now is a level of men's football that we've never seen before, right? And it's just the same thing when it comes to the women's game. When you invest into the game what it deserves, when you treat it with the respect and the professionalism that it should have, you have an unprecedented opportunity to have entertainment and athleticism and competition and just an amazing human social phenomena like nothing else.
For sure. And you mentioned there with the, pregnancy in women's sports and this type of aspect. So I encourage everyone to, I was talking to Victoria Kodjevina, which you mentioned before, and we were speaking about that. So if people want to hear her perspective on that, they should check out that episode as well.
She's spectacular and absolutely someone everyone should be following. Yes. She's doing amazing work now and just look out for what's coming next.
I will. You mentioned everyone has their favorite clubs, and Lewes was one of yours, and you mentioned also Valencia. And in addition to everything that you do that we have mentioned now, you're also the president of Valencia CF Academy in New York. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right. And I'm very honored to say that I'm also happy that the academy in Spain and the women's program in Spain is going from strength to strength. Next month, I will be there also. Great people are involved there. The coach, the head of the women's program, etc. That's a program that everyone should be looking at. A program which is aiming to, just like on the men's side, Valencia has one of the 5 best academies in the world. We're building one of the best women's academies in the world. So that's an incredibly exciting project, and I'm very honored that I had the opportunity in 2017 to help Valencia set up their academy in New York, which has some of the best clubs in the United States. Last year, our under 13 boys, for example, became national champions in U.S. club soccer. So it's an incredible opportunity. I think we would have many, many more championships. We've had regionals, championships, state championships go on. We can go on with that, but our focus is really, above all, as educators of young people, coaches of young people, helping them develop not only wonderful footballers, but more importantly, helping them develop into well-rounded, healthy human beings who love the game of football. And that's really what it's about. It's the joy of football. It's not about necessarily producing the next great player that's going to come out of the game, though of course that happens, and we see it again and again with Valencia's academy. But the thing is that it's above all, it's about the joy of the game, the beauty of the game, and about being coaches and educators of young people and helping them achieve their dreams. And we all know also how important playing football for joy or whatever reason you play soccer provides such incredible benefits to all of us, right? Whether it's what soccer can teach, just the ability to overcome the constant disappointment and reversals that is soccer. I mean, soccer is nothing. It's just constant suffering, isn't it? Whether you're a fan or you're a player, you fight and fight and fight. You run and run. You struggle nonstop, and it's so hard to achieve the goal. Whether that's scoring a goal or stopping an attack or winning a game, that's so difficult. But in the process, you learn things that are so valuable and that our kids nowadays need more than ever, right? When you see, especially after the COVID crisis, you see so much, the levels of depression in our youth, the suicidal thoughts and different things like that, which are, soccer has an opportunity not only to be an oasis or an escape, but it can teach so much in terms of helping everyone who participates achieve greater emotional maturity, greater discipline, greater confidence, and greater love for themselves, the ability to collaborate and cooperate with other people and work together, right? And to find within you the strength and the leadership that translates far beyond the pitch, right? I mean, when I talk to as a CEO of a for-profit corporation, obviously I talk to CEOs and CFOs and HR people and people in all different areas of corporate life. And they always tell me that when they see on a female applicant that she has played soccer, that is something they're so attracted to, right? It's so attractive. And you find that on so many of the CVs of great women within corporations around the world, you find that they've played soccer, and they'll tell you themselves what they have gained from playing the game. So, obviously we've been talking about the business of women's soccer during this conversation, but let's not forget also the unique power for soccer to empower and to inspire our girls and women and inspire all of us in the process. It's just an incredible, powerful tool. And I'll tell you, in my life, everything I've achieved, playing soccer and being involved in soccer has played a major role in bringing success to me on both a personal and a professional level.
Yeah. I had an earlier episode. The guest basically said that women athletes makes great leaders. So like what you said, that having that background from playing sports just translates into the business world so well.
Absolutely. It absolutely does. And I think it's very important to think about the fact that when we're also talking about women's soccer, women's football has a unique culture, right? And that's something people sometimes don't understand. It has a unique culture, and that it's a culture that has in it unique values, those of equality and diversity and inclusion. And, that's why women's soccer, apart from being high-level athleticism, high-level entertainment, it also has the power to force positive social change in a truly unique way that changes lives, not only the lives of individuals and groups, but of all of us, right? So one more reason why Athens women's football, and me in particular, have dedicated my life to growing women's soccer at all levels.
Yes, that's what I wanted to ask as well. You are a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
You are working also with that. You are a sports law professor. So
right.
If you tell us a little bit about your career, how did you start out and how did this interest for football start?
Well, listen, I mean, I fell in love with the game as a child. I mean, being Greek, obviously we love sports, athleticism, athletics of all kinds, but soccer is like a religion, right? And my brother was a fantastic player in our house. Soccer was something we talked about all the time. And as a kid, I actually fell in love with a team back in Athens, where we're from, AEK Athens. And it was that great AEK team of the late 70s with incredible players like Milis Papaioannou, Tomas Mavros, and Dusan Bajovic, and so many other great players, that made me truly fall in love with the game. And I would wait every Sunday to listen to a game on the radio. And my parents would take me to Astoria, Queens, in order to wait for the newspapers to come in on Saturday night. I mean, this is way before the internet that we have today, where everything's instant and easy, right? And we would wait for the videotapes to come from Greece so I could watch the games. And remember, listen, let me also mention that I had the privilege of seeing the incredible New York Cosmos play and watching Pelé play. And, that's an honor. To have lived through that experience where you'd go to Giant Stadium and see 70,000 plus fans and just some of the greatest players to ever live playing before you. And then, I was part of that pioneering generation that really took the men's game in the United States to a new level, right? I mean, when I was playing soccer, the American football coach would pull me to the side and say, "Yes, I don't get it. Why, someone like you, why are you playing soccer? Yeah, you're varsity captain, you're a smart kid, all the good grades, but why aren't you playing American football? Why are you playing this commie sport?" As he liked to put it. And I go, well, because it's the world's game. It's the world's game. It's the beautiful game. And it's going to be number one in America in my lifetime. And I just fell madly in love with soccer. Soccer gave me so much. So as I moved through my different levels of my career, becoming a lawyer, becoming a prosecutor, where at one point I was a special prosecutor for all domestic violence felonies in Queens County, New York, along with another attorney who was my partner. We worked together in a population of 2.3 million people. I was also a sex crimes prosecutor, always fighting to protect and to serve. There came a time later, after I was involved in corporate America and legal practice and other areas, where I decided to dedicate myself completely to growing soccer in the United States, to give back to the game that gave me so much. And during that journey, I fell madly in love with women's soccer. And so I decided to totally dedicate myself, everything that I've learned and experienced in my life, everything that I've done to working globally to grow women's soccer. And it has just been a phenomenal journey, which has taken me and takes me monthly all around the world, and where I've had the honor of being involved in so many things, especially behind the scenes, and meeting incredible people everywhere I go.
That's a beautiful story. That you're working with also partly what you love and that you can be so close to that. And also all the good things that you do for the women's football. It's fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. It's incredibly important. And I think together with all of us working together, we can be part of something that's truly unique right now. If football is the world's greatest human social phenomenon, women's soccer is the greatest movement within sports. And this is a unique time in history. We're still, despite all this success, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go in terms of even basic things like making sure that our girls and women who are playing the game, and no matter what their level, are in safe environments, right? Not only safe in terms of the facilities, in terms of the pitch, in terms of the locker rooms and what have you, but also safe in terms of the people around them, right? So that's something we're very much involved in Athens women's football. It's very important that we help to make sure that there's greater access to the women's game, right? I mean, so that poor kids, no matter where they are, right, whether they're minorities or otherwise, whether they're in cities or in rural environments, whether they're in Europe and the United States with all our resources, or they're in places in Africa or South America or Asia, wherever, where they, despite what you hear and what you're told, there's very little investment. The kids and girls and women want to play soccer. They want to play football. They deserve the opportunity. Again, safe environments that will show them the respect they need and cater to their needs also. not that making them play on lousy fields at 11 o'clock at night, right? After all the men's and boys teams are done, right? Not places that are unsafe, right? Not around the wrong people, right? A lot of the problems we have around the world have been because it's been the wrong people around female players, and the wrong people because it was also the wrong planning and investment. And that is directly a product of the underinvestment. When you don't pay people the amount of money they should be getting paid, when you're not providing the right environment, when you hire people that are inexpensive, so to speak, but might not be the right people, is just creating different risks. Whereas when you do things right, then when the process is good, when you're properly investing into the game at all levels, then you get to avoid so much that has caused harm to the game over the years. Right now, incredible work, for example, being done in the United States, where the United States Soccer Federation has established a participant safety task force, for example, headed by Mana Shim, who I had the pleasure of just talking with and listening to just now at the United States Soccer Federation annual general meeting in San Diego, and I had seen her just earlier in Philadelphia at United Soccer Coaches. You see amazing work being done right now that really further the safety of participants. And you see great work being done at the Federation again, Dr. George Champas and so many, over at the FA in England and what have you, at FIFA and UEFA, focused on female athlete health, right? Something that we ourselves are also very interested in and involved in, working to, up to now, we have so little information that's focused on the female body when it comes to female athletes. Almost everything out there comes from studies of the male athlete. We have a long way to go. And, for example, how can we talk about ACL injuries, for example, when apart from having, bad fields, and we don't take into account even the kind of shoes, the beach, right? But they're not.
Yeah, very important, as you say. So before I let you go, can you tell us a little bit about the summit? What's coming up now this year, 2023? What we look forward to?
Yes, the summit will be held on October 12 and 13, a Thursday and Friday, at the beautiful Athens Riviera, the Riviera coast in Greece, like every year. It's an opportunity to bring together really the top people throughout the game. Great teams, Lewes FC, of course, NWSL teams, CONCACAF, the NWSL, the English FA, FIF Pro, so many different organizations around the game that Valencia again and other clubs that have shown incredible interest to come. Again, it's often analogized to something like the Davos of women's football, where you bring together the top stakeholders for 2 days, a VIP dinner, other activations around the game. And it will be live streamed around the world, not only through our broadcast partners, which will be announced in the near future, companies, broadcasters that are actually broadcasting the game throughout the world, but also we will be using social media to make sure that everyone has access to these incredible discussions. For example, in the past, we've broadcast for free through Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, and that's something that we're going to do again because it's so important that everyone have access to the women's game, and the conversations that we have at the Athens Women's Football Summit are cutting edge and working to drive the game forward.
Definitely. Before I let you go, the last question that I ask everyone is, if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
That's a very good question. And I think that it's almost impossible to pick one of so many incredible people who are out there that day in, day out are working so hard to grow women's football and to do such great good through the women's beautiful game. But if I were to suggest one person, I would suggest Karen Dobre of Lewes FC. Not only is she just a spectacular person, but a great professional, and her involvement as a director at Lewes FC, the first club in the world, as we mentioned earlier, to equally resource their men's and women's programs. I think she would be a phenomenal guest.
Yes, that sounds very interesting. Marios, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management Podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Listen, it's been a true honor and a pleasure. And, I extend the invitation to you and to your listeners to reach out to us at Athens Women's Football Summit anytime. It's about us all working together to drive the global growth of women's soccer. And also very important to us is to help foster new pathways to success for girls and women throughout the game. So we're here and always delighted to connect with great people who share in our values. So thank you once again, Marcus, for inviting me here. It's, as I said, it was an honor and a pleasure.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.